Hey everyone, it's Sam Mackay here. Today we are going to go over something seriously cool in Power BI, but not easy. This is not an easy concept to get your head around, but I would say, if you can get your head around what is going on here, then you're doing very well. But this is actually a really common requirement in business, where you want to compare your results, your actual results, for example. You want to compare them to, say, a budget or a forecast, but sometimes that budget sits at a different granularity. You might have actuals which are at a daily level, but you might have budgets which are at a yearly level or a monthly level, and you need to somehow allocate that budget to a particular month. Now, the scenario that or a particular day in this case. So what we are going to walk through here is how we can not only allocate budgets across every single day, but what's also really common is that you might have a yearly budget, but then you might have seasonal weightings per month, because it's very rare. Well, it's not rare, but it's a lot of businesses have seasonality. So in some cases, you might have this yearly budget, but then you've got to allocate only, say, 5% to January versus 15% to July, because it's that's where the bulk of your sales happen in the summer, in the US summer or something like that. So I'm going to show you how you can, just through a yearly budget. In this case, it's against allocation. A yearly budget, how you can not only allocate this across every single day, so you can measure it against, say, a daily actual or even a monthly actual, but also how you can then distribute it across different weightings for individual months. So there's a bit of logic that we have to apply here. And then what you can achieve is the difference between these two. So down here, right? This is the budget allocation with no seasonality to it, whilst this actually has the seasonality to it. So here we're looking at a daily level, but if we were to jump to, say, a monthly level, you can see, we actually passed budget based on a seasonality factor here, but we didn't reach it here because the seasonality weighting was higher. So really, really, really good insight, right? Here's a good point. If you want to download this resource to actually see these formulas, then all you got to do is jump to the Enterprise DNA resources page, and you can get this along with a variety of other resources that cover all the different videos, through Enterprise DNA TV. And the link for that is in the description. Now, if we jump into this calculation, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you how to do it. So I'm going to create a new page here. I'm not going to write out each different formula because that's probably just going to take a little bit too much time, but I'm going to just create tables and we can walk through what's actually going on. So in this case, let's actually just have a look at what the budget allocation is. So here, if we have a look at this table down the bottom here, you've got total sales versus the budget allocation. Now, the budget allocation is just a simple, we have the days in the date context, so that would just be 1 divided by the days in the month, which would be, say, 30, 31, so on and so forth, times by the total budget amount. Okay, and so what that is doing is that on a daily context, it's going 1 divided by 31 and then timesing that by the total budget. Okay, and then if we put this to a month and year calc, then it is actually the same. I actually just realized something. This is actually named incorrectly. This should be days in year. If you look at this formula here, this is actually, I've named this incorrectly. It should be days in year because that actually makes more sense, right? We need to go 1 divided by the entire year because the budgets are on a yearly granularity. So we need to go 1 divided by 365 and then times that by the entire budget for that amount. And then we need to do that for the next day and the next day and the next day. Now, what if we then need to add in here? What if we need to add in here this budget weighting, this seasonality weighting, right? Well, we need to add some additional logic, and it gets a little bit more complex. So I'm just going to take our month and year out here. But here we've got the days, we've got total sales, and we've got our budget allocation with weighting. So this basically is the same as below, right? This is the same as the below number, but it's different because this is 170,000, this is 153,000, and that's because this 8% weighting, that's why. And then February, if we go down to February, that's going to be a lower amount, 123, because the weighting is also lower, it's 6%. But here, the budget allocation is the same all the way through. Okay, so what do we need to do? What do we need to do to actually calculate this? Okay, so this is just a really similar pattern that you could utilize, and you can actually download, obviously, if you venture into the Enterprise DNA resources. And so what we are doing here is we've had to bring in this additional variable in here. So seasonality, and I've got seasonality measure here. And so this total budget, right? We're still summing up the total budget, which is the yearly amount, but we are timesing it by the seasonality measure, and that's that 8%, that 6% for January and February, and so on and so forth. And so in the current context, this total budget isn't going to be the yearly amount anymore. It's actually going to be the monthly amount, which is what we want. Okay, so what we're going to be doing is we're going to be going 1 divided by the days in the month, which this has been adjusted to. So this is actually going to be, say, 30 days, and then we're going to times it by the monthly budget number instead of the entire budget number. So if we just bring in a couple of these measures here. So if I bring in the seasonality measure, you'll see that via this measure, we've got the 7.7%, and we've got and as we go down, 5.8%, and that's because this is actually two decimal places. So I'll actually one decimal place. And so we have been able to get that weighting into this table and align it to every single month that it is aligned to. And so we've had to do a couple of things to actually achieve that, but this basically is the formula that enables you to do it. So we have, all we're doing in here is really we're returning the seasonality measure inside of the date, the month that it should be, basically. So there's a little bit to this formula, but not super difficult to understand. Basically all we're doing is we're saying, okay, so what is the actual month inside of this date, and then return whatever the seasonality weighting was for that month. That's basically the logic behind it. And then we have integrated this seasonality measure, which is this one, into here, right? And that seasonality measure is what feeds into here. So this, say, 7.7% is what we times the yearly number by, because our budget's at a yearly level, and then that gives us a monthly number, and then we then integrate it into our logic where we go 1 divided by 30 times the monthly number. And that's how we then eventually get our budget allocations with their seasonality weighting incorporated into it. So seriously cool formula, right? Seriously cool way that you can quite efficiently, I would suggest, quite efficiently actually showcase how you're actually going versus budget. And so we could there's a number of different visualizations you could do. Maybe this looks a bit better. Maybe if we change the colors around a little bit, so we'll have a darker. Actually, we'll have a lighter there and a darker in the background, and so we can see on a daily basis, based on the allocations per month, how we actually tracking. And so, brilliant way to bring something quite complex down to a relatively intuitive format, and also it's dynamic, right? You can integrate this into the rest of your model. So it's just about finding the correct visualization to make this all work. Maybe just selecting an individual city in this case isn't actually a compelling enough visualization. We might need to group these cities into their particular regions, for example. But there's so many different ways that you can actually swing this. So it all comes down to this allocation algorithm. We've had to adjust it just from this simpler one. But we've only had to adjust it just slightly, and with that adjustment, we're now able to get a more, a better picture of how our sales are actually tracking, not against this generic daily number. It's actually against a specific weighting, a number with a weighting associated to it. So just a reminder, if you want to download this resource, you can, and you can just copy out that algorithm or that logic and utilize it in your own environments. Obviously, it's not as easy as that. You've got to understand a little bit around how to structure your model, but obviously you get this model in the resource, so you can figure out that too. And so all you got to do is just find the link below and go and navigate, and you can also download all the other resources that are associated to Enterprise DNA TV resources, or videos, sorry. Okay, so all the best. Don't forget to subscribe. We've got new videos every workday from Enterprise DNA TV. We are seriously building a movement here with Power BI, so want to get you along and want to showcase to you all the awesome techniques that you can utilize within Power BI. So best of luck with this technique in your own environments, and talk to you soon.